Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here for our round 4 live stream for the Byron Nelson. Got to cover all things DFS and props for tomorrow to get you ready to go out there, finish your week strong, and have yourself a day out there for fantasy or over there for some bets. First off, though, hopefully you're having a solid Saturday evening. We've got a little Crown and Coke in the cup. We're watching some MMA. Got plenty of lineups in on that side. Shout out to Ship It Nation for the projections over there. We've got Live Golf tonight. We've got plenty of NBA going on as well. It's a good time to be a sports fan. So we got you covered from the golf side here. First off, MN down there in chat. We got Nick Marsh down there who says he has an outright on Pendy. So yeah, I'll circle back to your question there. First off, that's a good spot to be in, Nick, right? Having an outright on the 54-hole leader. But welcome to the live stream. Got Steven down there. Ruffy was nasty. Yeah, dude, I played him a ton too. I have like 65%. It wasn't it like a 15-second victory, so he should be getting like 130 points. We take that all day. So, and I have to say, right, we'll start with our sponsor here. The only reason I played that roofie guy, and honestly, I don't even know who he is, I've never watched him before, is because they had him in the core over there at Ship It Nation. So it's a perfect little segue into our sponsor for this video. These live streams are brought to you by Ship It Nation, which is the source that you guys should be using for all of your DFS needs. So not just for golf that we talk up here on this channel, right? We'll talk some NFL towards that season, but for all the other sports, NBA, MMA, like I'm talking about right here, make sure to check out those guys. They're obviously helping us out by sponsoring these streams, right? Giving you guys a lot of this free content, and make sure to check them out if you haven't already. But let's get this thing started. We'll get back to the chat in a second. We'll go over some questions, all of you guys down there. So first off, say hi down in chat if you guys haven't already, and cheers, and let's get this thing rocking. So let me get a sip of my drink, and then we'll hop right on into what we saw today, and then the weather report for tomorrow and how we should approach it. I had to get a good, healthy sip in because I know once I get yapping here, guys, I'm not going to have much time to stop. So in terms of the course conditions today, they played how we expected them to, right? And we had about a 0.8 shot difference between the two waves, which anytime you're getting a 0.7, 0.8 shot advantage, that's going to be huge. And while we had some of our morning guys in our player pool, right, we had guys like Patton Kizzire that nearly had a -6 bogey-free round, ended up being -5 with a bogey on 18, which was the easiest hole in the golf course. But the few morning guys that we mixed in went out there, shot like 4 or 5 under, even better in a few cases, which was really nice, right? So we had that morning ceiling performance that we were looking for. And then a lot of that chalk that was teeing off later on ended up going out there and really paying off. So I think this is a really good precursor for what we're going to see for tomorrow, because the weather forecast looks almost identical to what we're going to get. But the big difference is the tee time setup, which is going to be in threesomes off of both tees. So rather than having the twosums like we had today, it's not going to be that same kind of scenario. So you have to think, right, when they do it in threesomes, the middle of the leaderboard is teeing off first, right? In your last tee times, the guys that I think will get a slight advantage out there tomorrow are going to be either the guys up there in first, right? They're going to be teeing off in the last group, or the guys that are completely in last place, right? Those sort of players are also going to be teeing off later because the tee times start from middle in, right, and go outwards. So when we take a look at this forecast, you'll see that in the mornings, I guess this HRRR forecast isn't showing a lot of the storms, but the reason why they're going off in threesomes is that there's a big chance for a storm tomorrow morning. So all McKinney, Texas has thunderstorm warnings from I think it's like 3 a.m. the whole way till noon. Now, they might not get those storms. Maybe they come in earlier than expected, or maybe they come in during that morning wave. So that's why they went out there, took the initiative to put them out in there in those threesomes, because if they come in later in the day, right, let's say closer to like 9, 10 a.m., well, that could delay the start of play. So we'll have to see with the timing of the storms. The fortunate part is that we're not going to have to worry about it all that much, right? Because they're going off in threesomes, the edge when it comes to the weather is a little bit minimalized. And you can see, though it's not a big advantage when it comes to the weather, the winds do kind of die down as the day goes on, right? You can see towards the afternoon, you've got it like 3 to 5 miles an hour. Well, it's not a huge difference. It is closer to 7 to 8 out there in the morning hours. You can see the wind gusts also kind of die down too, right? They're close to 8 to 10 miles an hour out there in the morning. But by the time we get to the afternoon wave, it is 6, 7 miles an hour at the very most. So I don't think it's a massive edge to be had, right? Especially if they're going off of threesomes. But what it does tell us is that the PM guys aren't going to get blown off the golf course, right? Whether it's the guys in the lead or the guys in dead last after 3 rounds, I don't see a huge difference when it comes to conditions. That combined with the fact that we have placement points out there for Sunday, is going to make it more of a chalky slate. So even yesterday, right, with the weather, we wanted to go out there, target some of the later starters. That made us a little bit more chalky. Now that we have the placement points in play, it's going to even more so add to that. Now, the placement points are not the end-all be-all. We're going to talk about that as soon as we hop over to the DFS side, which, speaking of, I think it's a good little segue. So let me share my screen. Let me bring up the DFS projections and give you guys the slate plan here. So out here for Sunday, right, usually it's about taking the right guys up top and then mixing in some of your chasers. And that is certainly going to be the case out here for Sunday Showdown. But the added caveat I want to add on top of that is going to be that the scoring is so good here, right? You're talking about maybe one of the easiest, if not the easiest course that we have in all the PGA Tour. That do we really need placement points, right? The difference between finishing in first and then finishing in 10th place in terms of placement is less than a birdie, right? It's actually, sorry, I think it's slightly over a birdie difference between first and 10th, right? When it's only like a birdie difference between the guys that are, playing pretty well and the guy that's finishing in first, right? The difference between 5th place and 25th is about a birdie as well. Actually, a little bit less than a birdie between 5th and 25th. We really don't care about those placement points, right? So somebody like a Jake Knapp, for example, somebody like a Taylor Pendrith, for example, right? That's $8,100, and that's also carrying a ton of ownership. To me, is an easy fade, right? A Jake Knapp still is going to have to make 6-7 birdies to get there. And while that is entirely possible for him, he still has to go out there and have that ceiling round, right? And when you compare his ownership to some of the guys around him, right, where you have like a Minwoo half the ownership, Adam Shank's like a third of the ownership, as somebody like a Jake Knapp, right? I'd rather take the shots on the lower-owned players. So the reason why I mentioned the placement points, like they're going to matter, right? You're going to have guys that finish top 5, top 10. I don't know if you have to have the winner out there for tomorrow, which normally, right, having the winner for the large field GPP is going to be an absolute must. But because Knapp and Pendrith are so far ahead from the rest of the field, right, if either one would shoot like -4 tomorrow, they could very well win this golf tournament, but not be optimal, because a -4 winning score round is essentially like making 6 birdies, right? And I can assure you that there will be more than 6 players that are making 7+ birdies tomorrow, right? In fact, we might have guys with the rainy conditions, they might have like 20 guys that are making 7+ birdies, right? And those are the players that you're going to want for your large field GPP lineups. Now, when you consider that you have a lot of these top tier players that are starting at -12, -13 or better, you're going to get a few of those players, right, that are making 6-7 birdies, right? So, for example, Siwoo and Alex Noren, any of these plays that I have highlighted on here, whether it's a Steven Yeager, Mitchell, or Minwoo Lee, any of those guys goes out there and makes 6 birdies, they're the guy that you have to have up top. So that's the approach I'm taking, right? I'm taking some of your lower-owned players, and I say lower-owned, right? They're all still like 20, 25%, but at least they're not the 30, 35% that we have on these top 2 players. So in terms of my spend ups, I'm taking some chalk up here, right, as you're going to have to do for a Sunday Showdown slate, but I'm avoiding a lot of that mega chalk. And I guess part of the reason for it too is mindset, right? Guys like Jake Knapp, Pendrith with a little bit of a cushion over the rest of the field aren't going to have to be as aggressive, right? They know if they shoot like a 67 tomorrow, that's going to be pretty damn good to get into a playoff, right? Because the guys behind them have to make up 3-4 shots just to get up into that same picture. So if they go out there and they have even just a decent round, that's probably going to be enough. So I worry about them being aggressive enough to go out there and make those 7-8 birdies. Whereas a Siwoo, even an Alex Noren at -15, right? We know that he's going to be aiming at every single pin because he's trying to track down guys on an easy golf course. So I think part of it is the mindset of some of these chasers. And another thing to remember is that the middle end of tee times, right? So guys that are like -9, -10 after the first 3 rounds are also going to have the first tee times out tomorrow. So it'll be the proverbial calm after the storm, right? If we have a delay, the conditions just after that normally are the absolute nuts. And even if we don't have a delay, right, they've got morning conditions, they've got soft greens, relatively low winds. I think you're going to see a lot of those guys go low. So I think the tee time setup, I think the weather setup all leans itself towards not taking some of that chalk up top. And when you add in the fact that Pendrith, right, has been a choker, right, in his career, right, he's been a player that's not played well when he's been up there towards the lead. Jake Knapp, a smaller sample size, but did play well out there at Vedanta, right? I kind of understand playing Jake Knapp a little bit more, but there are so many other guys around him that I like more that I'm not getting there myself. So That's what I'll say about ownership. That's what I'll say about the chalk up top, right? We already mentioned some of the players I'm getting to, and it's either guys that are really good putters, just in general. Alex Noren, has played well at this course, is playing well coming in, or it's the ball strikers, right? It's the Siwoos, the Jaegers, the Mitchells, the Minwoo Lees that are absolutely hitting the cover off the golf ball. So that's my strategy up top. It's kind of similar to what we had for round 2, where if I'm taking players that are getting the ownership up here, it's either really good course fits or guys that are just from tee to green, absolutely killing it. So that's what we have with a lot of those players. Before we hop down to some of our value plays, let's catch up on chat, see what's going on. Because, with some of this chalk up top, we're going to have to offset that ownership. So, our mid to lower tier plays are going to have to be pretty low owned. So let's see what we got going on. So first off, say hi down chat if you guys haven't already. Happy May the 6th, Luke. You are your father. Yeah, I like that, right? It's May the 4th, right? That is the May the 4th be with you that people go with. I like that. That pick 6 nuke was fire. Yeah, they hit, right? Went 4 for 4. Day before that, I'm pretty sure we went 4 for 4 too out there for the round 2. So yeah, let's run it back for Sunday. I've already got 4 props picked out for pick 6. So we'll have you covered there. It's nice of the PGA to start looking at the weather. Yeah, they didn't do it a few weeks ago, huh? So yeah, I agree with you, man. It would be an absolute shit show if they had twosomes and then they had some kind of delay. So good on them for doing that. Siwoo can throw darts at a pin, especially on a wet, soft course. Amen, dude. Completely agree with you. So before I forget, let's go back to your question. Do you fade him at DFS because if he wins, you get all of that? I would fade him. Yeah, frankly, like if I had that kind of incentive, if he goes out there in nukes, like I'd probably fade him in DFS because if you ignored your exposure, right? You ignored your fact that you had an outright, a 30% owned guy that's a choker on Sundays is probably not someone you want to play in all your lineups, right? So that's how I would look at it, right? I wouldn't even worry about you having an outright bet. I think out of principle that most people should be fading Pendrith out there for tomorrow just because of ownership. Now, if you absolutely love the guy, then maybe you do play him. So maybe if you ignore the outright and you still want to play Pendrith, then take him, because I think that's how you should look at it, right? I think you should just try and forget about the outright, right? Do whatever you're going to do with your process. But I think that most people, when they're doing that, right, are going to end up fading him because of that ownership. So yeah, I'd probably fade him, man. Let's see. You hope Mitchell can bounce back for your outright. Yeah, he's close enough. I don't have an outright there, but that's actually a pretty solid horse to have. And he's within striking distance. What is he? Minus 13 here. Yeah, after the first 3 days. I would say if he goes out there and he shoots -8, -9, that'll give him a chance. But yeah, he's definitely going to have to go low. And you never know. He ball striked the living hell out of it today. He missed 3 of his first 4 greens. In fact, he really should have missed 4 of his first 4 greens. And then afterwards, went out there and went 14 for 14 to finish. So if you're into momentum, you're into trying to find players that figured something out. It definitely looked like Keith Mitchell was striping the ball. So that's why I like him for DFS. That's why I like him for Showdown. The guy was absolutely killing it out there. 1 second, guys. Let's hop into these value plays. Didn't want to blow out your eardrums there, though. So let's talk about some of the 8 and 7K guys I'm taking. So this is where we got to get different, right? A lot of the plays that we talked about up here have some ownership. I'll say that I am playing Adam Schenk. He's going to be a little bit lower owned, but outside of him, everyone's like 20%. So my AK plays can't be super chalky guys like Pendrith, right? Because if I'm going to take Pendrith at -19, I would be chalk at like 3-4 spots, right? My spend ups and an AK guy there at like 30%. It's just, I think, a recipe for disaster. So it kind of depends what you're doing, Nick, right? Just to circle back to your question, like maybe you play Pendrith if you're taking Jason Day, for example, right? He's going to be super low owned. Maybe you're taking a shot on Tom Hoagie out there for Sunday. If you're doing that, then sure, right? Take Pendrith. But if you're not, right, everyone else is carrying ownership. So you're just going to have a hard time getting different. So the player I prefer would be somebody like a KH Lee, who could not make a birdie for his life today, but the ball striking was actually pretty decent, right? He was setting up like 20, 25 footers. He normally makes a lot of those out there at this golf course and just couldn't get anything going. So he had one really sloppy bogey towards the end of his round, but otherwise was pretty in control of his ball striking. So the eye test just checked. The stats looked pretty decent out there for Saturday. So despite not having that flat stick, I'll go out there and take him, right, at a golf course that he's killed in the past. Down there in the 7Ks, we've got Davis Riley, Nick Dunlap that I'm playing. Dunlap, a little bit more ownership, right? He's 15% owned, but Riley at 8.2%, is a real good way to differentiate. And the idea with Davis Riley is not the placement points that we're going after. It's this high birdie upside, right? And if he were like $7,200, $7,300, I would expect him to be maybe 12, even 15% owned, but he is a little bit too expensive here. And because of the fact that he's a little bit overpriced, not a lot of people are taking him out there for his lineup. So at $8,200, that's a decent spot to get different to the field at. We already mentioned Dunlop. Bottom end of the 7Ks, top end of the 6K range, you can see you have guys that are like sub 6%. So you see, got Dylan Wu at sub 5%. He's a high upside birdie maker, right? Pretty good approach player, solid putter when he has his best stuff. Like, I'll take a shot on that. Hopefully he goes out there, shoots like -5, -6, because, there are chalkier guys we could take down here, like a Coles, for example, even a Kelly Craft. They still got to make the birdies, right? Like, these sort of players, even if they finish top 3, are going to have to make 5, 6 birdies to get there. And frankly, I think there are higher upside players that rather take down here that are 3, 4, even sometimes 5 times lower owned, right? Like Kelly Craft, Ben Coles in particular, might be like 20% owned in some of your single entries. Dylan Wu might be 2% owned out there in some of your single entries. You might have a like 4% owned Goddard, right? Somebody like Hisatune might be 1.5% owned out there in some of the single entries. These are the players that I'll take a shot on, right? They're players that are arguably just as good, if not better, than some of the other chalkier options. Because the other thing to remember is that guys like Kraft, Whaley, Kevin Tway, right? All these players that are up there toward, they're more expensive now too, right? Like Kevin Tway was like $6,200 this week. Vince Whaley was like a mid 6K player. Kelly Craft was like $6,100 out there for DFS. Now they're more expensive and they're getting more ownership, and they still have to shoot a low score to get to the optimal lineup. So give me the players that are actually cheaper now, right now that we've gone to Sunday Showdown, and in my opinion, have more birdie or better upside. Goddard might be my favorite value down low, as he's a power player capable of putting up an eagle or two, which would be huge out there for Showdown. And he's at -12, so he's close enough to the top where he could get some of those top 5 points, but he's not -13, 14, or 15 and getting all that ownership attention. So those are the kind of pivots that I'm looking at. And actually, the last 2 highlighted plays I wanted to go through. So hopefully that gives you a good taste for my player pool, right? How I'm going after this slate. It's not really the names that we went through that are important, right? It's the process, right? Up top, try and find guys that are doing it sustainably, right? Try and find some ball strikers that you think can continue that out there for Sunday. Middle to bottom end of the board, I think you got to be more creative about it, right? That's why I went to a course history guy like KH Lee, right? That's why I went to a birdie or better percentage guy like Davis Riley. That's why I took some of these high upside players like a Goddard, Hisatune, and Dylan Wu towards the bottom, right? You've got to have a little bit of a game plan for this slate. Now, maybe you do like the chalk down low. Maybe you want to take stands on like a Coles, a Kraft, a Whaley, etc. That means up top, you're going to have to differentiate, right? There are pros and cons to taking pieces of chalk. And frankly, the pieces of chalk up top, I feel much more comfortable with than some of the guys like Ben Coles, Kevin Tway, for example. Like, those kind of players are just really sketchy to use in general. I'd be much more comfortable taking these kind of guys up top. So that's what I'm doing. It doesn't have to be your exact strategy for tomorrow, but hopefully it gives you a little bit of perspective on how I'm attacking this kind of slate. Let's see what's going on in chat, and then talk a little bit of lineup construction and then props. I want to watch this UFC. I want to watch the Live Golf. So we're not going to stick around too long today. We're going to try and make it like a half an hour, 40-minute stream. Let's see, Kang time again. I don't know about that. He loves the golf course though, right? He's played really well here. So maybe there's something to it, but it's an ugly play. And he's actually getting ownership because of the fact that he's -13. So Sung Kang, right? He's down here. He's blacked out on my sheet. I think I have him at like 8% ownership. So yeah, I can't do it, but he does like the course, that's for sure. TPC Lee, absolutely. Can't go wrong with him. What's going on, Angelina? What's going on, Kep? Says, who is surging into the top 10? So by surging, I'm assuming you're talking, somebody that maybe has to shoot pretty low to get to the top 10. We'll go with TPC Lee, right? He's starting far enough back where it would be a little bit of a hot take to say that he's going to finish top 10. So, well, yeah, maybe it's TPC Lee, right? Low ownership, $8,000. Everyone's going to feel jaded by him today because he went out there and didn't make any birdies. And, it's golf, right? It's a crazy sport. I mean, you have bad days, right? That's just going to happen. Everyone has bad days, no matter what you're doing, right? I have bad days all the time out there with what I'm doing. These golfers, they aren't immune to that either, right? No one's perfect, right? So just understand that I am a much more forgiving person than most when it comes to DFS players. And I think that he's like the perfect target for that, right? Go back to him, hope that he can actually get that putter working. And if it pays off, you're going to get paid off very well because he'll be low owned. So let me bring up DraftKings. We'll talk some lineup construction. And then I've already got an underdog slip put together that we'll talk about on that side. And I already have a pick 6 slip. Now, I'm not sure if they have the prize picks board up yet. Which let me see. Let me just refresh this real quick. So yeah, it doesn't look like we have prize picks quite yet, but we have those other 2 sites that we'll talk about. So we'll hopefully be able to delay long enough to get that posted. So let me go over here to DraftKings. Let's talk through some lineup construction. And like I always mention with this part of the video, and I'm always going to mention it, right? Because, some of you that have been here for a while probably tired of hearing it. But if you're new, you're just playing Sunday Showdown for the first time, it matters, right? So first off, I'm going to show you the scoring. We're going to do this as quick as possible and just remind you how useless the placement points are. First place gets 13, right? Fifth place isn't even all that special, right? For Sunday Showdown is less than a birdie difference, right? It's 8 points for fifth. You get 13 for first. You get nearly 6 points for a birdie, right? So if you're talking about a Gsluke, right, maybe making 7 birdies and getting into the top 10, if he makes 7 birdies and he's getting anything up here from like 5th down to 10th, he's going to blow away the winner if he only makes like 4 or 5 birdies. So that's why I'm so adamant about taking the chasers. And the other thing I say about going out there and building lineups is you have to pick where you're going to get different, right? Don't just be mindlessly putting players into lineups, right? That is a for sure way to go out there and pay the rake, right? You have to have a game plan when going out there and selecting your lineups, whether you're building by hand, you're doing it with an optimizer. You need to be forcing builds to a certain way. So what I did, right, I already mentioned my strategy for building lineups is I'm differentiating down low, right? I'm taking some of my chalk up top. It's the same idea that we went with for our round 3 stuff. Round 4, I'd say it's even more important to take some of that chalk because we got to get the placement points, right? So the pieces of chalk I'm fading, I'm not taking Knapp, I'm not taking Pendrith, but other than that, I'll take a lot of the guys that are getting ownership. So let's throw a Siwoo into this lineup. Let's throw a Minwoo as our second man in. Down here in the 8K range, I am going to get slightly different with somebody like a KH Lee. And then with our last 3 spots, I should say, I'm out here for the rest of this lineup. I'm not going to go crazy with ownership. So I'm going to throw a Dunlop in there. He's like 15%. So, he's not a pivot by any means, but he's also not mega chalk out there in the 7K range. Our next man in, right, I'm going to avoid a Kelly Craft. I'm going to avoid a Ben Coles because you're talking about 20-25% ownership right there, right? And everyone in this lineup so far is at least 13% owned. Like, that's just a disaster, right? That's asking to be duplicated. That's asking to have a lack of leverage. It's something that you should definitely avoid in GPPs, but even for single entries, right? You don't want to go too overboard with the ownership. So down here, the kind of players that I'd be looking at are guys that are more of pivots, right? So like $7,500, like I'd rather have a Burger at 77. I'd rather take a Stevens at 74, like anyone except for the mega chalky guys, like a Coles, a Kraft, a Whaley, etc. So just for the sake of this, I'm going to click layered into this lineup. It really doesn't matter who you chose there. Again, this isn't a lineup that I'm making for you guys to tail. It's more so to give you an idea of what I'm thinking about when building lineups. So we've got pivot with Lee, pivot with Laird for sure out there in terms of ownership. And then for our last man in, this is where I try to avoid like a Smalley, a Kazire, for example, right? This is where a Dylan Wu comes in extra handy because we need another pivot, right? I need at least 2, maybe even 3 pivots in the lineup. And that's what we've got here, right? Laird, Wu, probably sub 5%. Somebody like KH Lee at 12% ownership is getting us a little bit different there too. From the product ownership perspective, in terms of projection, both boxes are checked, right? We've got enough leverage here to feel decent about it, even for the largest field GPPs, but also no one in this lineup, I guess for Laird. Like, I really don't like Laird. I don't know why I clicked him as the random player. Maybe we'll go with Sam Stevens instead. I like Stevens more than Laird. But you get the idea, right? They're all pretty decent players when it comes to the projection, and you're going to have enough leverage for the large field GPP. So this is all dictated by knowing where you're going to get different. And again, not just aimlessly clicking players into lineups. If I was playing cash, I would 100% have Knapp in lineups. And I'm not so sure about Pendrith. I'm not 100% sure I'd play Pendy, but at $8,100, you could definitely throw him in there in cash as well. But the one guy for me I would definitely be playing at cash would be Jake Knapp. Up here in the 9Ks, I would almost certainly have Jaeger. He feels like a very safe play. And I'd also have somebody like Aaron Rye. So what I'm looking for with these 3 is safety, right? Players that have a relatively high floor. Jake Knapp with his ball striking, feel pretty solid about that. Same thing with Jaeger and Aaron Rye. And that's the kind of lineup I'd be going with in that kind of GPP. So I shouldn't say GPP, right? That kind of fantasy contest, because it's the opposite of a large field GPP, right? And cash contest, head-to-heads, whatever the case might be, for a cash lineup, we're just trying to beat 50% of the field. So it's a much different thought process than trying to go out there and hit the absolute nuts. And my player pool, my thought process, all of that, when building lineups, is going to differ quite significantly out there from contest to contest. So that's it for DFS. If you're just here for that, go ahead and smash the like button on the way out of here. But we're still going to talk props. We still have at least 3, maybe even 4 slips we're going to go through. So stream is not quite over yet. But if you're just here for the DFS stuff, the fantasy stuff on Draftkings and Showdown, I still appreciate you guys, right? Even if you're only here for half the live stream, the only thing I ask from you before you hop on out of here is to smash that like button. If we can get this to 100 likes, I'm going to give a free month of my Patreon away to anyone that comments down in the chat. So if you're one of the people that's down there and we get this to 100 likes, it's not just in the live chat, right? So if anyone's on replay watching this, hit the like button too. If get to 100, I'm going to randomly shuffle anyone that commented live or over there after the fact with the comments and give you guys a free chance at that Patreon page. So smash the like button if you haven't already. Let's try and get those numbers up, get this content out there to more people. And again, hey, I do this free content for you guys. The only thing I ask for is that you hit the like button. So go out there and do it. Don't be lazy, right? Let's go through any last second questions for DFS and then talk through some props. Wallace isn't too chalky at 20%, only 2 bogeys so far this week. Yeah, I think he's all right. He is going a little bit under the radar, right? He had a little bit of a shaky ending there, right? He bogeyed, what was it, hole 16, made a little bit of a sloppy bogey. But I think in general that, he's looking a lot better. I think his mental game is what's driving the difference. He used to be really down on himself when he'd make mistakes. Now, after that bogey on 16, it was either 15 or 16 where he made that mistake. He got really down on himself. He cussed himself out for a solid 30 seconds to a minute, which was not what you want to see from him, but he's getting better with it, right? Normally that would tank him, that would completely derail him at a certain event. So it was probably good that he was close to the end of his round. We'll have to see how it goes through. I'm liking the differences though, right? Like in the past, it would have been a whole lot worse. Big 2, hit the like button. That's what we like to see down there in chat. Shout out to you, boss, man. Let's go through this. So we're going to start with Underdog. Then we're going to go through pick 6. And then hopefully Prize Picks has some stuff posted. They do. Okay, sweet. So we'll have that to go through as well. But here's a few props I took on Underdog. So I've got 2 props I've already entered. There's going to be plenty more posted on my Patreon page. So of course, guys, right, to get all the content that you see in these videos, including the spreadsheets uncensored, right? So you can use those projections, player pool for yourself. Check out the Patreon page there. And for all the different slips that I'm entering. So to give you guys an idea, our props today went really well. So you can see $900 made on that slip, right? This slip over here, right, made $300. We had a few bad slips. This was the one from the stream yesterday. That didn't work out. This slip was utter absolute dog shit. But then we had a few other slips like this Answer Kept at one hit. This John Rahm. John Rahm sold. I don't know if you guys watched the Live Golf yesterday. John Rahm was like -6, I think, at one stage. Ended up only finishing -3. So it could have been better. You can see this one missed by 0.52. So we had a couple slips that were really close to hitting. But when you have a 9x hitting, a 3x there, another 3x for Live, Prize Picks, we had 2 or 3 slips hitting as well. It ended up being a really good day. So let's try and run that back, figure out what we're going to do here. And the 2 slips I want to point out here for the Underdog side are 2 fades, and it's on 2 of the guys towards the top end of the board. So the first one is an over on Taylor Pendrith bogeys, and the second prop is an over on Cole strokes. So neither one's been bumped yet. I honestly think both will be bumped here at some stage. Cole's is at 68.5 on, was it Caesars and William Hill, the only sports book that as of right now had lines up. Let me see if FanDuel has updated it. Let's see. So yeah, no strokes lines posted on FanDuel yet, but over there in Caesars William Hill, they have Cole's at 68.5, and he's -155 towards the over. So if you're somebody that's looking for plus EV bets when it comes to the leans, that's huge. That's huge value right there. And then this over on Pendrith, the bogey average today was 1.97 per round. Taylor Pendrith is about a field average bogey avoider. So, on a neutral field, right, we'd have him at about 2 bogeys, which is over this 1.5. But when you add in the fact that he's the leader of the event, right, he's sleeping on the lead, he's a choker in the past, somebody that hasn't played well when he's been in this situation, even if he has an average day, right, makes 5 birdies, 2 bogeys, which might win him the golf tournament, that would be an over at 1.5 bogeys. So I like that value. I like this over on Ben Coles. Again, both of these will probably bump at some stage. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Pendrith was a 0.9x for the over at some stage. In Coles, especially with that minus 155 juice, we'll have to see what FanDuel goes with, right? DraftKings, if they post a board, I'm imagining it'll be pretty similar, if not the same number out there on Coles. That'll probably get bumped as well. So that's 2.76x out there for that 2-man, and both players in contention, right? Both going to be under that Sunday pressure, which historically has been very good for props, right? You can see that Cole's prop actually probably just got bumped right there, which honestly, that was a matter of time. That prop was way off. This Pendrith 1-2 makes absolutely no sense. Just to get an idea, like I'm assuming that this board on Prize Picks is higher for strokes, and let me just double check on that. So let's see, where's Ben Coles at? I'm sure they have him up. Yeah, he's at 69 strokes, right? He's an entire stroke higher over there, right? Pendrith, I'm sure they have a lineup for Pendrith on here, right? Where's he at, right? He's at 68 strokes. So he's at a 3-under projection. Do they have a birdie lineup for him? Let's see. So Taylor Pendrith, they do have him up, right? He's up there at 5 birdies. If he's at a -3 projection, right? And he's at a 5 birdie projection, that puts him at 2 bogeys or worse per round, right? I mean, that's just some quick math right there, right? That shows you that he's probably at least 0.5 too low. And then when you add in the fact that he's in contention, right? Pressure, all of that. That's why I went out there and took him for a fade. So those are the 2 that we took there, I guess, just for shits and gigs. Let me see what they did with the Coles. That's crazy if they took him off. So yeah, they took off his prop entirely. I guess if you weren't able to get that in, you could fade his like leaderboard position or something, but I'd probably wait to see what they post him back at. So let's go over here to the pick 6 side. This is the side that I really want to go through because they have Coles at 67.5 on pick 6. Like, what are we doing here, right? Kevin Tway at 67.5 strokes. Like this is just comical. Like, sure, one of these 2 could shoot -4. Like I get it's an easy golf course. That's possible, but the scoring average for the field is probably going to be like 68.5. And Coles and Tway are bottom feeder players, right? They're bottom half players in this kind of field. So to have them projected a stroke better than the projected field average, mistake in my book, right? So that's why I took both of their overs. And then over here for the birdie or better side, you've got S.H. Kim and you've got Taylor Pendrith, who Pendrith, right, does not have to be aggressive, right? Going out there as the leader. Like he can make 4 or 5 birdies and hope he might win the golf tournament. So I've got his under for birdies and then also S.H. Kim too, right? Like I've got the field average for birdies. It was 4.49 today out there for the field. I've got it at about 4.5 again out there for Sunday. Somebody like S.H. Kim, Taylor Pendrith should be at that field average, maybe at 5, right? Like Prize Picks has Pendrith at 5, right? But 5.5 birdies is just asking way too much. So kind of like yesterday, right? Conditions are easy. I mean, they were easy today. You saw that, but we still hit all 4 of our props on this site because these are way too optimistic. And they essentially took the pricing from yesterday and copied and pasted it. And that doesn't mean we're going to hit all 4 again. I mean, it'd be great if we could go out there and do so. But if they're going to feed us these kind of lines, give me these scrubs. And I don't want to call them scrubs. Like these guys are legit tour players, right? I'm trying not to be disrespectful about it, but they're not top 20 players in this field. I mean, none of them are, right? None of these guys are players that we're expecting to see in the playoffs at the end of the year. Like maybe 1 or 2 of them sneak in, right? In that last 25, 30 spots. Those sort of players should not be projected so much better than the field average. So we've got those 2 props over there in Underdog. We've got these 4 over here in pick 6. And kind of like yesterday, these pick 6 props, you don't have to enter a 4-man, right? If you want to go with 2-mans or 3-mans and do that, I would like that as well, right? I just can't play slips over here in pick 6, or else I'd give you a better idea of what I'm playing, right? Because I can't get exposure there, but I'll just give you the 4 props that I like. And feel free to mix and match them with whatever you guys are taking on your side and get to whatever exposure that you want. What I'm going to do on Prize Picks now is take a look at their pricing. So they've got like Hughes at 4.5, Mitchell 4.5, Jaeger 4.5. They have some of these guys on Underdog at 5.5, and I believe like 1.1x towards the under. So yeah, you can see Shanks at 5.5, even money. Let's see somebody like Minwoo, right? Who what is his projection? He's not even posted, I guess, over here on Prize Picks, but right, if anything, would probably be at 5 birdies, and he's 5.5 and 1.1x towards the under. So kind of like yesterday where we almost hit that slip where we took the 3 unders on birdies. Actually, I'm not sure if I gave that to you guys over there in live stream. That might have been a Patreon only slip. I took a bunch of unders on birdies once again, And the only one that didn't hit was Luke List, and he got us by 0.5. So like Jaeger, for example, right? He's at 5, or sorry, he's actually at 4.5 over here on Prize Picks, even lower than what we are looking at. Like 5.5 birdies, and we get the 1.1x multiplier. Like, I hate to pick on Jaeger because I honestly think he's going to play well tomorrow, but it doesn't matter who it is. They shouldn't have these guys at these kind of projections. So Benny Ann, you can see he's not posted, but he'd probably be at like 4.5, maybe 5 birdies over there in Prize Picks. This is the other way that we could attack the board. Now, Sibu Kim, right? He's another guy there, but I'm not sure if I'd fade him in particular just because it's Sibu. The guy's an absolute madman. But this board in general is too high. Like, they've got Jake Knapp at 5.5 birdies. You know, even him, right? I'd be looking at for a fade. So let's see. Cole's at 5 birdies. Like, I know if you couldn't get that strokes line, like the 1.1x for the under 5, I don't think it's a bad idea at all out there for somebody like Cole's. But let's see. Shank, if he had a multiplier, would be a really good under. Minwoo, I guess we could consider for the under at 1.1x as well. All of these props are leans that I'd take. Now, am I going to play these 4? Not sure yet, right? I'm going to have to look at the stats, figure out which ones are the best for a fade. But pretty much no matter the name, right? Anyone that's at 5.5 and has this 1.1x multiplier, I'll take the under on, right? To get to 6 birdies is going to require you to have a hell of a day out there. And I guess with Knapp, he's probably my favorite out of these 4, but he doesn't have to be hyper aggressive out there. So I could see him kind of taking the, foot off the gas pedal a little bit, right? Maybe being a little bit more conservative. Minwoo made like 8 birdies today. So it feels like he's due for some regression. So he's actually probably one of my favorite guys to look at for that. And then Benny Ann, I like fading Benny Ann, so maybe he's the one we take. And then Jaeger's the one I probably feel the worst about. So maybe we take him out and we go with these 3. I'll at least mull it over while we go over here to Prize Picks. So I do want to try and find some sort of slip to enter. They have a bunch of these guys at 13.5 greens again. Troy Merritt is a clear fade spot for me. And then this Chris Kim at 4.5. This kid's 16 years old. Like, I get the story. I love the fact that we have this young kid in the field. Like, it's a good feel-good story. Today was about as good as he could have played, right? He made, 4 birdies today. Day before that, he would have gone over. He made 6 birdies. And then round 1, he also would have gone over. So I guess that's why they're posting him at this 4.5 number. But I don't know if I'm sold on it, right? I mean, it's a super young kid. He's playing on Sunday of a PGA tournament. I'm tempted to take his under. But this Troy Merritt one, I 100% want to take because I took it today and he went well under his line. So I'll jump back on that one. Let's see if we can try and find like an over on fairways or something. These greens lines are probably too high. Take an over on them. If they were at 13 like we had on Underdog yesterday, I would be taking their over, but not so much at 13.5. Maybe we can find an under on strokes. Like, these strokes lines are much more reasonable than what they have over there on the Underdog side. Like, they're 0.5, even a stroke higher at times. So maybe we can find something. So Chris Kim at 70 strokes. That's only 1 under par. So, like, if I was going to do anything, right? I mean, I was just talking about fading his birdie line, but -1, right? So if they have him at 4.5 birdies, that means he would be at a 3.5 bogey line. Like, I don't know. Maybe you take him for strokes for under. Like, I don't know. He's not going to make 3.5 bogeys on average. Like, I imagine he's not that bad with the short game. In fact, if we take a look at the shots gained metrics, they'll probably give us a little bit of an idea how he's playing. So let's see. Look at this. He's number 1 in the field around the green. Let's see. His driving accuracy has been okay. His greens regulation, not great. So he's not hitting a bunch of greens, but it's not like he's making a bunch of bogeys, right? His around the green has been really stout. He made 3 bogeys today, which wasn't great. He made 2 the day prior, and then day 1 he had 1, 2, 3, 4 bogeys on the day. So, and he still shot a 68 out there for the first day. So he showed even if he does make bogeys, that it won't matter. Now I want to take his under on strokes. So that's probably a good stay away, right? If I like the fade for bogeys, but the under on strokes, that's probably telling me not to take either side of it. So let's stay away from Chris Kim. I have to say, I don't hate that though. Like, he's I don't know, that around the green stuff is pretty damn impressive. I'll say that much. So he's at 68.5. Yeah, I'd probably stay away from him at that point. if you didn't get him at 68. He's at 68.5 on pick 6. Wow, that's a whole 1.5 strokes lower. Yeah, dude, that under 70, I don't think is like the worst one there. Let's see. 13x today, thanks to you and DGens' process. Well, first off, appreciate that. And good stuff, man. That's awesome. What's going on, Brian? Good luck tomorrow. Good luck with you as well. Hoagie killed you on prize picks. Yeah, he didn't have a great day, huh? And got the 5 birdies somehow too. That was under 5.5 then. No, right? So yeah, that was his line. So I don't know how that mattered, but yeah, Hoagie got me too. Who do I think wins? I don't really have a take on that, man. Honestly, somebody except for Taylor Pendrith. Like, I could see Knapp holding on, right? That's like the obvious answer would be Jake Knapp. But one of these chasers, like a Siwoo, Jaeger, Mitchell, Norn, like any of the guys that are minus 13 or better, if one of them goes off, they win this golf tournament. So, yeah, I mean, it's Jake Knapp, right? If I had to give you one answer, but it would not surprise me if those two guys up top just kind of sputter their wheels a little bit, right? Only shoot like -3, -4, and then someone steals it. Minwoo is 5.5 on pick 6. Yeah, it makes sense. The pick 6 numbers, I honestly don't use for comparison because they're so inaccurate, right? They're by far the worst projections that they have. Coles is back. Yeah, we already went over that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got. I'm going to watch this MMA. I'm going to watch the Live Golf here tonight. So I'm going to hop on out of here. If you have any questions, you're watching this on replay, you can still go ahead and ask down below. But that's all I've got, guys. So best of luck out there tomorrow for DFS, for props, whatever you guys get into. If you haven't already hit that like button, go ahead and do so and subscribe so you don't miss any of our content to come. Next week, we got a signature field, also an alternate field event. So we got Quail Hollow, the Wells Fargo, also the Myrtle Beach Classic, which new golf course, new location, new everything out there for the alternate field. So we'll be covering the Wells Fargo side in full detail. Might be throwing in a few pieces of content over there from Myrtle Beach, but looking forward to it, guys. Like I said, best of luck and subscribe so don't miss any of that to come next week.